Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot, storyteller, and don't believe a word I say. This show is simply for entertainment's sake. And I'm just waking up here. It's 7:25, a cloudy Saturday, in a full house. And I'm seeing clearer and clearer um, that we are all in this game. And it's a shadow because I woke up relatively early at 4. I went to bed early. I went to bed at 10. I usually go to sleep anyway, somewhere around midnight or 1. MJ. And, um, and I'm seeing all these things. So anyway, I woke up this morning at 4:35. I was watching the internet. I have my stream, and there's this guy who does show. He's all about flat Earth and Tertarianism and all of that, which is kind of the mud flood and all these things. And I was raised pretty much to be an intelligence officer, right? And my dad was a bird colonel in the Air Force, and being um, you know the guy he was a triple Virgo. He was always right. He was very organized, very methodical kind of guy. And he graduated college in the mid part of the Depression, and he was, Italian, and in America, who's ever the last off the boat gets the short end of the stick, and uh, the black American slave is about on the third rung, right? And and they were a staunch, um, isolated group of the middle class, the black American slave, and they fit a good, they were easily programmable. Um, they were very good at doing whatever job they were programmed to do, and and they fit that role well. So they were on the third rung, and whoever the Irish were folk who were always because, especially if you look at the Tartarian um, his, historical point of view, the Irish race were the Aryans that the Nazis were looking for, and they popped up in lots of. They were all over the place. They weren't just in Ireland. They were in Africa. They were in the Mid East. They were in North America. They were in South, all over the place. And there is you know, just by looking at this, you could see how these people could be the remnants of what some people would call, you know, Lemuria and the ancient lost races, right? And because it's pretty obvious that how do you build a pyramid, with tolerances that we can't even produce today? Sure wasn't with slaves rolling 20, 60-ton blocks of granite um, up across the desert, you know, up logs. No, I don't think so. And that they fit like with tolerances that they can't even be produced today. And then that you find these pyramids all over the planet. They're all over America. They're all over Europe. They're everywhere, right? And they're always called different things like, Indian mounds and burial temples. And, I was in Ireland with my mentor Archie, and his whole thing was, he was looking for pyramids all over Ireland, and he had no funding, no one backing. I mean, he was a Scottish, earl. He came from a pretty wealthy family, so he didn't have to worry about paying the bills. But doing any real archaeological stuff, no, right? And in that time, and I had all these mentors, these old um, scholars, and just seeing how they were given the short rift, um, in their because they were scholars in academia, and it was like mixing oil and water. And but as I grew up, like I said, my dad, being Italian, but he was really good looking, like a movie star, and his father was a barber for like the rich and powerful. He had a place in the Waldorf Astoria and a place in this place called Freeport, Long Island, which was the Hollywood of the early days. I mean, movies were made in Long Island before they moved to California, and the actors came from the vaudeville stages of New York, and that was the other clientele of my grandfather's business. And my father was exposed to all that, so he was like a movie star, and he was very athletic, and he was a football star in high school, and that's how he got to college. And he went to many different schools, right? And all that time, he played professional football when he was in New York. He went to Manhattanville and a few other colleges in Manhattan, and he was, he's on, all the sports pages, Death in the Afternoon, Al Bob's son, Al Bob's father. Anyway, so um, during the Depression, he graduated. Somebody know, he was a college graduate, no work, period, right? And the only thing he could get was being an operator at Macy's on the elevator. And that's when he got a glimpse of my mom, and he was like smitten, right? But she didn't even know he existed because she was already wheeling and dealing. She was only at Macy's because her best friend, Aunt Grace, was head of the nursing, head of the medical. Macy's had their own hospital in their stores. They took care of their employees, and pretty much the healthcare in the United States during that time was employers having the medical facilities themselves because they wanted their workers to be healthy, productive, right? And that's where Blue Cross and Blue Shield kind of came from, right? They wanted these people to be productive. Anyway, so my dad, um, and then my mom, because she was such a shaker mover, she knew Grover Cleveland, who kind of did the New York um, State thing. He was the big daddy of New York State, and along with Robert Moses and a few other people. So my mom hung out with heavyweighty people from as a little girl from upstate New York. But her lineage was pretty intense. Her forefathers were the original Gilded Age, robber barons, right? And her great, like three great grandfathers before the Civil War, they were part of the imperial state of New York. That's why it's called the Empire State. I mean, they just stole everything from the Indians they could, and and that's the lineage of my mom. And so my dad being the Italian, and being Italian was like really looked at. I mean, they like a lot of the really negative, um, the three, you know, groups that got the real bum rush in America were, well, four, I guess, were, well, five black people, but they were a subset over here, slaves. The Irish, the Italians, the Germans, and the Chinese. So first it was, the slaves, then the Chinese, who were like not even human. At least black people were a quarter human. Um, and then, the Irish and the Italians and the Germans. And they were white-ish, so they kind of could blend into the WASP mentality, but they never were, and that's what the middle class was the refuge that was needed to run the industrial corporate might, right? So that is the illusion, the shadow, and we've had a shadow government from the beginning. If you just read, go see the play Hamilton, which is a fictitious thing, but it gives a good sense of that shadowness of the founding fathers. Often, this building in Philadelphia, right, writing our Constitution, and how it was like you don't want to watch the sausage being made, and so that's where we are, and the illusion of what's going on, and this country has been rebranded many times, right? First, when the in European, guys were here, the French and the English, um, that was one level of the branding, king and country and imperial exploitation of indigenous peoples. But at least those guys viewed the Indians as sovereign states, and their agreements were kept. But soon as we had a constitution, it was like that was ripped away. Whatever kind of uh, relationships indigenous people had with the Europeans was gone, and so all of those deals that were made were gone, right? And that has been carried through, you know, and that's why it's a joke. The United States is a country of immigrants, and so the corporate structure, which was what our founding fathers put in place, was the corporate structure: white, land owning, rich men. That's who the Constitution was written for. But they're all, constantly influences and fluxes, and everything has, nothing has been written in stone in this country. Everything is always being done on the fly. And presently, what we're experiencing is that we don't even have a government anymore. I mean, and it's the people in the shadows. First of all, you have to realize that we as the public are the shadow, right? And we are this dark matter, right? And the powers that be are kidding themselves. The people who are most in and things like Black Lives Matter is a joke. That's a corporate, brand. You know, our government it was flying the Black Lives Matter flag all around the world at all our bases and things, and still there is no real uh, you know basically you see everyone except that 1% being disenfranchised across the board and made to go after each other, and that can't work for very much longer. So all of what's being done right now, and it started with the assassination of Jack Kennedy. You know, to get any kind of understanding of what's going on, we have to have some level of truth and integrity, and there is none in this country. Period. And if you live here, this is the country of bread and circus, and the rest of the world is going that way, especially Europe. I have a food stamp card. That's where I get my food, and I have my Social Security check. That's it. And in Australia, which is you know the test tube of the corporate entities branded, and I lived there 3 years, and the 3 years I was here, And the Queen runs that place, right? And she came and got pissed off at their fish. Um, she came there when they in Australia they have two-party system like we do. We have they have the Labor Party, which is the union guys, and they have what is known as the Liberal Party, and this is really a telltale sign of branding because folks who were the Liberal Party were the most racist, unbelievable, fascist folks you could think, right? Guys like Rupert Murdoch and Reginald Ansett and all the guys, they owned everything. Reginald Ansett, it moved, it was like the mob. And see, the difference between the corporate world and the mob world is the mob world understands that their profit comes from the middle class, not the stock market. They're not making money on the stock market, right? They're delivering goods and services, right? And when you start attacking the middle class, you're going after the bottom line of the mob. So you have that there, right? So Kennedy comes in, and all the way up to Kennedy, everybody who was president were white men who represented the WASP mentality, WASP, white Anglo-Saxon um, Protestant, right? So that's the dynamic of the special relationship between England and the United States. We have never stopped being a property of England. Our Revolution War was, England was tired of paying the bills, and they realized that they could get everything they wanted from America, good services and resources, and also, uh, you know, make us their willing lapdog of a military industrial complex by letting us believe that we have freedom, right? And so, first to believe it, they had to have a little war uh, to get put things in place, and so they did, and the English won every frigging battle, and then they walk away after a number of years of fighting, right? And they got everything they wanted. They set it all up the way they wanted it, and then they went away. And that's what the Revolutionary War was. To put our founding fathers, that's like, you know, what you call the loyal resistance, right? And you kind of architect it. That's like what Black Lives Matter is. That's what Antifa is. That's what the Communist Party was. Australia is the biggest police state. Yes, I lived there 3 years. So the Queen came there, and when they were having, finally the Labor Party got its act together, and they won a landslide. The Queen came there 2 weeks before the election and went around Australia to every major city um, to go, hello, how you doing? Vote for the Liberal Party. That's my party, the Liberal Party. And basically, when she pulled, like I was in Sydney, when they gave everyone a week off so they could hang with the Queen. And everyone left town, went to the beach, and she got really pissed off. Then she went to Melbourne. Same thing happened then. She went to Adelaide and Perth. And by the time she got to Perth, she was pissed because everyone just kind of, in England, doing this is like doing this, right? So everyone was doing this to the Queen and saying the rudest things. And so when she gets on the airplane, she goes, well, screw, do this to you, Australian people. I'm declaring martial law. And the election happens. The Labor Party wins by a landslide, and the Queen's representative, who's this guy who stands over the corner in their legislative body, doesn't vote on anything. He wears a dress and holds a scepter, but that's all he does. Well, the Labor Party wins. They're starting to set up a government. He goes into Parliament, pounds the scepter on the floor, and with the power given to me by the Queen of England, I declare martial law. And he had the whole thing of what the martial law was. Couldn't gather on the street, couldn't talk about politics, couldn't mention, television was just reruns of Gunsmoke, but it was legal to drive drunk. It was legal to shoot people. It was legal to kill your wife or husband. It was legal. I mean, whatever was chaotic on an individual level, the powers that be let it fly. Yep, everything Max said came true. But people were talking about, as Max talked about, and it took Max totally off the screen and made his, because he's living there, right? So, uh, and he made it personal. See, I don't make this personal. I'm telling you a story. I'm a storyteller. That's me. That's what I do. I was trained from birth to be an intelligence officer, and I had the most exotic education, and it came because my dad, so he's a football star. During the Depression, he can only get a job as an elevator operator with a college degree, and he really looks good, and that's where he met my mom, saw my mom, right? And then the World Fair happened, and my mom became head of the medical scene at the World's Fair. My dad got a job as a ticket taker, and he stuck his hand in the turnstile device so it would get crunched, and so he got to go to the hospital where my mom fixed him up, like so, she could operate on him, so she fixed him up, and he's a good looking guy, so you're a pretty good looking guy, but so she puts him in the Rolodex, but she's having these anyway. That's a whole nother 5 hour story about my mom. But anyway, what happens is he's getting nowhere with my mom. He's just got this job as elevator operator, and then ticket taker at the World's Fair, and these are all very limited jobs, no real future. He's a future oriented guy, so he's got a degree, and his best buddy, is going to join the Air Force. So they both sign up because they're both college grads, and they're both in really good shape. They're both football guys, and that was Michael Babe. And so they, you know, um, and it was the Army Air Force. So you were joining the Army. So they go, they take all the tests. They do really great on the tests. And my dad really scored super duper high on the tests as an organizing kind of guy. And then they go into flight training. And they both wash out. And this is a time, our government's spending nothing on the military, and it's a depression. So unless you were really, ace kind of pilot to begin with, you were not going to be a pilot. So they say, well, the Army says, well, that was very nice, thanks. You're now in our Rolodex, and when we need you, we'll give you a call. And by the way, you, father of soon to be Al Bob, we really like you. We got plans for you, and so go back and fool around with stuff for a year or so, and we'll give you a call. Things are brewing. We will call you. So my dad does. He has a few jobs here. He was a gym teacher, and he did a few. He worked for the state in parks and at Jones Beach, and so he did stuff like that. And then they called him and they said, okay, listen, this is what we need. From all your testing, when all we, you're not going to be a pilot, but what we really need is organizational guys. And so there's going to be a war, and this is like 1938, and so there's going to be a war, and so we have to start to build our little infrastructure. And the most important thing in this war is going to be the Air Force, right? So we don't have the money to really build an Air Force, but we do have the money to build the infrastructure. So when we have to, start turning that out in a big way, we'll have somewhat of it. So my dad spent 2 years um, going around the country setting up air bases and organizing and making strategies and protocols and things like that. And that's where I get that's the gene pool of me. I have that in me. And so, and my mother, after fooling around in New York City, being the belle of the ball and running lots of things, but really never. She got to a point where she had a lot of power, but she once the depression ended, once this war that was coming ended, she realized she had no, and she was hanging out with really rich guys, but they were like dilettantes. She wanted a guy who was going to do something, right? And a guy that she could manipulate 100%. Like she'd be the admiral of the navy, they'd be the captain of the ship, right? So you know, um, you know, he's constantly sending her postcards and writing to her, and then she goes, "Well, if you're ever in New York, look me up." So he did, and she just hooked him, hook, line, and sinker. So they became boyfriend and girlfriend. But he's in the Air Force, and she likes the way he looks in uniform. And he went from like lieutenant, second, all the way up to captain, like within the first year, right? And then he's going around setting up all these air bases. They make him a major, like right off the bat. He's like 30 something years old, and anyway, so he gets a car, he has servants, he's living in a nice house where every airbase because he's the guy who goes there and says that'll go over here, this will go over there, we'll have this over there, and he has his engineer staff and all that. He really knows what to do, but he just gives the orders. And that was my dad. He was really good at that. And so what he was really good at, and again, genetically, he passed that down to me. He was really good at saying who was good at stuff and then putting them in charge and then they made him look good and he gave them the access to do what they wanted to do. So that's one of my skill sets too. So um the war, the clouds are starting to brew, and um, he so he was you know making those first connections with the military industrial complex and all of that, and the money people. And what was truly interesting was that the war breaks out in Europe, and the United States is neutral, and we're selling as much stuff to the Nazis as we are to England, right? So, I mean, that's not really advertised too much, but you just have to scratch um, Prescott Bush, George H. Bush's daddy, who wasn't his daddy. George H. Bush actually was a immigrant. His father was Russian. His father was a Russian spy and worked for Nikola Tesla and was sending all the stuff back to Stalin. And George H. Bush, the character Curious George, and the man in the yellow hat, that was George H. Bush, was Curious George, because he was a little kid. His dad was this Russian engineer who worked for Tesla, and George was always with his dad, and it was always running around like a little monkey, stealing stuff from Tesla. And now if his dad did it, then it would be obvious his dad was a spy. But with this cheeky little monkey, George H. Bush, but he was like George, some Russian name, and the man in the yellow hat was the intelligence officer, who was Prescott Bush. If you take a look at Prescott Bush, he always has a hat on. Anyway, during that time, before and even during the war, George Prescott Bush was selling ball bearings and gasoline additives to the Third Reich, all the way through. And he was one of the guys who wanted to have overthrow FDR. He was one of those cult guys that Colonel, what was the guy? He was the most decorated military guy in World War One. I forget his name, but they went because he was he was a poster boy. He was like Captain America, and Snively Boots or something like that. And he was the character that Stan Lee made Captain America from, that guy. And so he was he had his 15 minutes of fame. And so this cabal that Prescott Bush was in, wanted to overthrow FDR and have a fascist dictator like Nazis, right? They really, that's why there was the German American bond, board, that was the test thing of seeing how much America wanted to be Nazis, right? And so Prescott was selling it all the way to almost the end of the war. He made billions out of that. That's where uh, what's the name of that big company that they made? It was kind of Halliburton was part of it, and you know Poppy Bush. You know why George H. Uh, W. Bush, first 41. Why they calling him Poppy? Not because he was daddy, because he sold heroin. He was a poppy boy, right? He had all those offshore oil rigs to facilitate, the scurrying in of heroin. And why? One of the main reasons why we had a war, because we didn't just have a war in Vietnam, we had a war in Indochina that involved more people died in Cambodia than a lot of millions of people died in Vietnam, but same with Cambodia, and that's how we got Pol Pot, because that's where the poppy fields were, and so this is all history, but it gets rewritten every day, right? And anyway, so my dad was, that, and he was he made Bird Colonel, and he worked for Curtis LeMay, incinerating Germany and bringing that to Japan with the B. That my dad was involved in the development of B-29. I have a picture of him at the Waldorf Astoria in tuxedo with his crew, not his air crew, but the men who, the officers underneath him, his staff. That even when he was in Europe, putting together air bases in Europe with B-24s. B-24 is the most mass-produced bomber in World War II, and it was designed not for its characteristics of flying. I mean, it meant that it was a long-distance bomber. It could fly about 6,000 miles. So that meant it could, if you had a base in Europe, you could hit any target in Europe with the B-24. And it could carry large loads of bombs. But its problem with to do that, its angle of attack, meaning where they put the wing, was right on the top of the airplane instead of the middle of the airplane, because that's the structurally the best place to put it. But at top, it left a tremendous room for bomb load, right? And but by having the wing load up here, all you had to do is come at it, with an ME 109 and its cannon, and just come sideways straight along the wing, and it would, the gas tanks would start to leak and maybe start fire. And structurally, if you lost a lot of fuel on one side or the other, it would snap the wing right off the airplane. And if you got a few of those cannon shells in to where those primary connective uh, uh, structures were in that wing load, it would, so that plane lost more people. Whereas the B-17 was almost it was called the Flying Fortress. It was indestructible. I mean, a thing could make it back to base with half the airplane missing, right? Whereas the B-24, you hit it a few places, it was down. So they lost more guys in B-24s than any other aircraft. So my dad, that was the aircraft that they set out first. And he first went to North Africa and then to Italy, and then they brought him back because he had all the experience of how terrible B-24 was and all its issues, that he came back and helped put together the B-29, which was like the most amazing bomber there was. It was designed to incinerate Japan, right? It could fly about 11,000 miles, so all you needed was one of those little islands, and it could bomb accurately from 30,000 feet. It could cruise even above that. So it flew at an altitude the Japanese didn't even have an airplane to get up to. and their anti-aircraft shells, did not go that high. And so, they could fly over Japan during the day, see everything. They had radar bombing, so they could fly in the clouds and still bomb accurately. And the B-24, B-20, and B-17, you know, the crews were like flying. I mean, there was no heat. They had to wear these, electrified suits. It was very cumbersome, and they were like in spacesuits up there. Whereas the B-29 had a pressurized cabin; they could be in shirt sleeves, right? So he was involved in dealing with the issues. He brought what was really happening in the field to the engineers and add his expertise at keeping an airbase running, the maintenance and the this and the that. So his he and his staff were instrumental in making that aircraft. I mean, it was already designed. It was already, they were like in that last end of testing it and working on the kinks. So that's why they brought him back. And my mom lived with him in like 18 different bases, and before the war and then during this period. And she kind of liked that because, like I said, he always had a really nice house, had a driver, had a car, had a staff, had a butler, all of that. And that's the kind of, hierarchy. You get the perks. And in America, we are all like my father in that we are just working for the structure. And see, that's one of the real. If you go watch Cliff Hyde's, his woo woo normie shows are really pretty good. And he is showing how one of the real structural problems is America is, our dollar bill. It's got a pyramid on it. Why do we have a pyramid? Because we're a pyramid scam. You get everyone to join up. I want to be an American citizen. It's so much greater to live in my country than anywhere else. And the only way to do that is that we have to constantly ferment wars everywhere. I mean, in the 70s, I traveled the world. I did my traveling between 1967, when I guess, uh, 66, 67 was my sophomore year. And I got thrown out of a, seminary where I was, supposed to be one of the chosen ones to be, a rocket scientist for the Pope. You know, I was going to be the upper echelon. My godfather was a cardinal. That was, and that's where that whole period of my life from birth, well, from 7 until then, I was constantly given access to cultural things that enabled me to be an intelligence officer. We are pruned and pricked and picked and furled like plants in the field, and every citizen, that's what they are. So you're given the opportunities or not given the opportunities to do this, that, or the other thing, and we play those roles, right? And everything's a work in progress. So it's on the slipstream. So there's nothing written in stone. So yes, I had these plans for me. I would go. So I got to that seminary. I didn't fall in line. You know, it wasn't fair. They actually had slaves there. They had a caste system. The freshmen and sophomores, we were called fags. And for a reason. I mean, half the priests were bumming all of those kids in the bummer, and openly. You know, I knew Latin, so I had to do mass all the time. We had mass every friggin' day, 6 in the morning before breakfast, and I had to get up like at 5. And I would go over there, and the other kid who spoke Latin, I go brilliant, and he was shorter than I was, and he had glasses like that thick. And so he could, he had other senses. His sight wasn't the best. He could really read, but he couldn't see what was going. So priest work, he was raw meat for the taking, And because we kind of hung out, we were in the same hole in our dormitory, and so we didn't have rooms. We had these spaces that six of us would live, and so the freshmen, the dining hall was in the freshman dorm, and so the freshmen worked in the kitchen and worked as waiters. If you were a waiter, you didn't eat with the table. You just served them. You had to eat, like on the fly. You had to get there before everyone came for the meal and set up, the dining hall, and that's when you had breakfast. They had food on these side tables that we could grab and eat. And I I kept doing things, saying this ain't fair. Da 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 da. And I spoke up about things because I could, because my godfather was a cardinal. The two teachers in that school who really, really liked me, and I had their ear, was Dr. Sheehan, who was a priest, but they called him doctor because he had so many PhDs, and he was the headmaster. So if you want to have your best buddy in the administration, was the headmaster. So I had that ear, so I kept saying, this ain't right, and this isn't even good for the school, and there's going to be a problem because this is early '60s, and the racial thing was happening, and most of these people were mixed race. They weren't just all black; they were mixed race. But the black folk worked in the farm, and as I got more and more punished, I had to work in the farm, work in the kitchen. I had to be a waiter. I had to be because I was being a priest. I was doing the masses. Anyway, so this one morning I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm not a morning guy. And I go over to the big church, and I go over and they're setting things up, and this priest comes in, and he's not even going to say the mass, but has the hots for Igo, and he's cornering him, and he's trying to pull his pants down, and I just keep coming over and asking questions. Father, what should I do with this? Leave me alone. I'm not doing the mass. I said, well, why are you here? I just wanted to be right there as I goes, guarding his back, and because all of us who lived in this house, so our rooms, we didn't have rooms. We just had these alcoves. And there were six kids to an alcove, and and we were an interesting crew. I don't know why we got put together, but we were all the odd men out. The rest of the kids who went to that school, their brothers went there, their fathers went there, because they had three rungs. They had kids who were going to be priests like me, guys who were going to be businessmen. They wore three-piece suits. I wore the black cassock, the tea dress, and the the guy's going to be Catholic men of industry like Joe Kennedy and Jack Kennedy, Um, and Kennedy was my roommate in this other prep school I went to. And anyway, so I had these, and when I was a kid and got murdered by a nun in first grade, my cardinal godfather sent me to a Marinol enclave. It wasn't a seminary because there were nuns and priests there. As it should be. It was a healthy place, you know? And these people were really focused on love and Jesus and spiritual and knowing. They were all about knowing. The Franciscans, Jesuits are all about, you know, backstabbing and deals and control and power. But the Marinols were all about knowing. And not knowing like power knowing, like the Jesuits and Franciscans were sharp guys. They weren't stupid, but they were all about power. And the Marinols were more about truth and love. And so, from hey Dorothy, so we got Fish, Dorothy, and MJ, a good crew. Uh, so, and Fish, Australia says biggest police state. Well, it was started out as a penal colony, right? Australia was a penal colony. That's like sending your criminals to Mars, right? Because back in the day when they started that place, it was expensive to get you from England to Australia, the other end of the earth. The criminals they sent there weren't, the pickpockets, right? They were people like the royal families during the days of Jack the Ripper. Well, that was the Queen's cousin, and he was the royal surgeon, right? And so he'd be cutting chicks up, and as long as he was going after the prostitutes, no big deal. Who cares, right? But once he started slicing up the middle class merchants' wives, that was a problem. So they shipped him off to Australia. And so all those families like Ansett and Rupert Murdoch, and there's about 10 families that rule um, Australia with a fictitious thing of democracy and you vote for your politician. No, no, it's just like here. And we brought all our most sick, strange, like there's a place called Alice Springs in Australia, which makes Area 51 look like Disneyland. It is so down low, so out in the middle of nowhere. And there's Alice Springs, there's Wallen Missile Range, there's Pine Gap. It's all over the Northern Territory over there, kind of between Adelaide. I mean, really, between a place called Broome and Alice Springs. And there's the Wallen Missile Range, which is where they tested hydrogen bombs. That's why they did high altitude tests of hydrogen bombs in that range, and that's why we lost our ozone layer. It wasn't hairspray, it wasn't CFCs. It was that we were testing hydrogen bombs in the troposphere. So, and don't believe a word I say. This is all made up. It's a fictitious story just to entertain. I'm just here as your griot, just here to tell you a story. And so you have to realize all of this goes to your day to day. And it's on our nickel, you know? And so, I'm being prone to do these nefarious things for the corporate state. And every time and you have to agree to go along, but they give you a lot of perks, right? And so, but I saw what it did to my father and his friends and lots of other people. I'm an aware guy. I'm seeing all this stuff because when you get murdered, by a nun who was a Nazi. Uh, she was a guard in the death camps in Germany, and the Vatican rat line got her out and put her in a Catholic school in New York, and her nickname was the milkmaid of death because she would murder people by squeezing their breasts so much that because you have these simplex nerves that can knock off your heartbeat. There's when you learn certain uh, mystic martial arts, there are just certain points in your body. If you touch them, like Spock's little vocal, well, that's true. And there are other ones around your breasts that if you hit the right spot, you can stop the person's heart. Or that's the simplex nerve. You hit that, and you will wish you were being waterboarded. Because the pain is so intense that you can't even breathe, and then you suffocate, right? But it takes 5 minutes of excruciating pain, like you can't believe. And so, I was like schooled in all of this kind of intelligence work. That's what they call it, intelligence. You're an intelligence operative, and I was more the analyst kind of guy, right? But I learned all this other stuff, and they can, oh, you're going to go to school here, or you're going to learn this, or you're going to do that, or you're going to, that's fine, you can be told to go do that. But to go do that stuff, you have to say, yes, I will do that. You make an oath. and I would never take the oath. I was in many different, categories of, oh, well, he's not going to do that. Well, let's send him over here. He'll do that. He loves thinking about this stuff. He'll love doing that. And they kept doing that, right? And I kept saying, and when they got to that point of, okay, we're going to own your soul, I said, I don't think so. But they would still keep using me for this. I mean, I spent 30 years as the itinerant scholar. I spent 10 years, being the negotiator in the corporate world. Still working for the same guys. I just was able to navigate myself in a way that I could live with it. But I could because, like, working for the corporate world, I gained 200 pounds and died, and it destroyed this little body. But when I died and went up, and they had the big party for me, my teachers were there, and they said, "Oh, you're doing a great job, but you have to go back." What do you mean go back? I'm dead. No, no, no. You're not dead. You're just partially dead. You're gonna go back and you're gonna finish. I mean, no, yeah, sure, you can come home, but if you come home, there is a consequence, and that consequence is you're gonna be thrown right back into the wearing blender of karma, and God knows where you're gonna pop out. You're not gonna come out as Sensei Al Bob. Sorry, buddy. But if you want, you're right at this great point. If you just keep going, you're going to take that little baby step in your conscious ascension. And that's what you want. That's why you made the deal before you came and joined this crazy, insane cloud party. And so I said, okay, okay, I'll go back. So, but when I went back, so I woke up on a gurney being rolled into an operating room where they're going to chop my legs off and crack my chest. And I knew that, okay, if I did that, I'll die. Being, I'll die in a year, and I won't be able to do all that stuff. So I'll be in the same position I was up there when I was wearing a party hat. You know, I would have been better off, to do that, than to die, a year later with no legs and you know, really miserable. So I said, no, no, I didn't sign anything. Roll me back to the ICU. I'm getting over this. And it took me 6 years. I had to lose 240 pounds. And my doctors still don't know how I live, because I have charcoal legs. And go Google charcoal legs. Basically, what happens is the joints from your knee to your big toe turn into mush. And usually they cut your legs off and give you prosthesis. If you're they want to cut it off just below your kneecap. And but if that's not, they take it above the kneecap, and then you have to roll around in a motorized wheelchair. And and when you're not walking, your body isn't working, and so you're going to die. So I had all these other things. Good morning, pup. And so that's been my life. It's been this constant negotiation of understanding what's going on and letting myself being drawn into this, that, or the other thing that's interesting me and educates me, and that's my path. I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm supposed to be integrating into these entities because nothing is good, bad, or indifferent. So, like right now, I'm waking up, right? So I'm in terrific pain right now. Normally, I'm meditating, right? So the pain is getting to a point of being disconcerting. So I'm going to meditate right now. So I want all you guys to be part of this, right? I want you to feel not my pain, but my chi, my energy, what heals me, why I can walk when I shouldn't be able to walk. Like right now, I can't walk, right? I have to do this little process. And I was went on air. I wanted to do it. Not see I'm kind of in bed here, and so this is my wake up process. So I told you a little story before a few of you showed up. Now we're going to share this little, and I've been doing guided meditations for you guys. So whole thing is to go into your Akashic record, right? To leave your body, and you do that by just breathing. Breathe 20% more than you normally do. Breathe out 30%. So you can breathe in more. And say a little why you do mantras is that they are there to enable you to breathe. Right. So the two mantras we're going to work on today are, and these are tools like a hammer and a saw, is conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. And you do that all in one breath, right? And the other one is conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Oh, and before an intent, you need to have an intent. So I want to do this. I want to accomplish that. I want this in my life. That's the intent, right? So first you need to be aware to have the intent, right? So first we do conscious aware I am, conscious aware I am, you know, 3 or 4 times in their like, one breath, right? 3 breaths of that, and then we do 3 of that. And then you will be in state, and I will walk you through that. So we'll start it up, and you guys continue, and I will walk you through it. Okay, so here we go. And this is a shamanic little thing you do with it, whatever hand you write with. And first, this is when you can. I'll teach you how to muscle test, so you can figure out what you should eat or not eat, or what medicines will be good for you or shouldn't take. And next finger, next. And what that does, if you learn being an osteopath, you have these different systems in your hands and they're all integrated going different ways. And that's why we're integrated with all our relations, right? We have the whole system, our physical system is a truly amazing integrated system, and not just in your body. Conscious intent, I am. 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 And the intent I'm using is to get that integrated system working at top notch, so I don't feel the pain. So my muscles work in their optimum so they can work, right? And right now, by me doing that once, the pain in my feet and ankles has diminished by 40%, right? Now, conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Oh. Conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Oh. Conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Oh. And why I start out with the intent first, because the intent was to get my body um, in a homeostasis, a balance, and then I'm aware. I'm measuring an awareness of how well I'm doing, and so that's what I do. I say those 2 things. My intent is to get my body into a homeostasis where it's healthy, and working at its optimum. And my awareness is to feel all of those feedback loops and plug them into the right uh, socket, so my body does work at its optimum. So, and if you notice, my eyes are kind of closed, right? And so that allows me to see everything on my imaginary mirror. And that's why you have REM sleep. That's your back of your eyelids, right? So as you're doing that and you're consciously focusing your mind on your conscious intent and your conscious awareness of that intent, and everything else goes away. And so, when I say to people, oh, you need to meditate. And they think that's sitting quietly. Now, to meditate, you do have to sit quietly. You can't meditate while you're driving your car or using a buzzsaw. No, you've got to be in a quiet place where you're basically safe and protected, and so you won't fall down. And so here I am laying on the couch here, and I sleep, and I'm consciously aware of my body, and I am consciously intent to put it in a state of homeostasis, right? So I'm not thinking about anything else. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about what I need to get up and do or blah, blah, blah. None of the blah, blah, blah. And so people go, oh, I can't meditate. I can't quiet my mind. I keep thinking about stuff. Well, unless you put your mind on something else, like your intent and your awareness, you're not going to be able to quiet down, right? You can't get rid of the chattering squirrel in your head. So, and when those things do pop in, all you have to do is just like on your smartphone, when stuff comes on your feed, you want to see it, just go like sweep it away, sweep it away, sweep it away. So those things that distract you, just sweep them away, right? Okay. So it's good to see you all joining the chat. Welcome home. And now you're in a comfortable place. You got your screen, in a safe place right there next to you. And so you can just consciously intent yourself into a state of conscious relaxation. Right? And your body and all your, all of your distractions will go away. Right? And you can focus on your intent and your awareness. When you're that, you're unbeatable because you will see the distraction. You will see the threat. You will see the thing that you don't want in your life 3 blocks away. You can just get out of the way or be prepared for it when it comes. So you can just tell it all. When people, just get in your space and annoy you, and you wish you could have said this. Well, if you see them coming 3 blocks away, you can prepare to say that before they open their mouth or do anything. You just say, blah, 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 and drop the mic and walk away. And they're like, I did that naturally as a little peanut of a kid. And so when bullies, oh, look at this kid, he's easy picking, we can go after him. I would see them coming, and first thing I would do, I would ignore them like they didn't exist, right? And that, I'd be like one step away so they couldn't touch me, so they couldn't kick me, couldn't step on me. I'd be just out of their hands reach, and like they weren't there, just turn this way, turn that way, move a little bit in front, turn around, go behind them. And, that my first martial arts teacher taught me that. Mrs. Gerling, right? When I was like, whatever you are in kindergarten, she was great. And she was straight up OSS operative. Beautiful, gorgeous, brilliant, smart, just so disarming. Anyway, so she saw this one kid come pick on me, and I didn't even notice he was picking on me. And she once said, you're really good at that. She showed me how to be consciously aware. First person to do it. My grandma also taught me that. But Mrs. Gerling showed me how to just stay out of their hand, just out of their, just outside of where they were. And then she showed me how to get behind them and how to just lean sideways, take my foot about a foot away from them and kick right behind their kneecap, right on their calf. And it would collapse them on the ground. And the pain in their calf wouldn't damage them, wouldn't hurt them. It wasn't like karate that you break their. It would just stun the muscle, and you get a Charlie horse. And they'd be on the ground, and nothing would be wrong with them, but their calf would hurt like the dickens, and they wouldn't be thinking about picking on you ever again. And so, in kindergarten, I learned that one. And she said the best thing to do is walk these bullies out of eyes so no one sees you do this to them, right? And then walk away and don't say anything about it. Don't brag about it. Don't be braggadocious, right? And um, and basically, I remember doing that once in grammar school, just once, um, because and what it was I had this crew, and I told you the grammar school from third grade to eighth grade was an amazing school. You know, just because how it came to be, it's probably one of the best schools on the planet because it wasn't like the robot public schools. It really tried to, or not tried, it did the best for the students, right? It's what the students did with it was another story, but they did the best for the students. So, um, early on, because this grammar school used to be the high school, and then they made it the central grammar school for all these little grammar schools. They put them all, this kind of centralized, it was a very decentralized school system. It was a very rural, farmy kind of place, and then it started to become suburban, and so they changed. And they did it like that, right? Not like piecemeal, just they had this idea, this vision, bingo, they did it, right? And so when I went to school in third grade, the first day in the cafeteria in my little brown bag, there were these cliques of all these different grammar schools that had been put together there. So this grammar school was at this table and this, and I didn't come from any grammar school, so I didn't have a clique. So I went around looking places to sit. And all these people, oh, don't sit here, don't sit here. You're not one of us. You're not one of us. So I really got the other feeling. Whereas being brought up in New York, I never had that. We were all in Harlem. We were all together. You know, it was quite interesting. Harlem was as a little boy in the 50s. And there were no cops there. It was all run by grandmas. You know, grandmas were a lot tougher than cops. So anyway, um, in my crew was there were four girls and five guys, and were all we were all really different. You know, the one black kid in our whole school of 300 kids, our grammar school, well, the one black kid, his father and mother are both lawyers, so he's a pretty smart kid. And so he was in our crew. Matty Law. His father's a lawyer. His name was Law. And he was like, great great grandfather was a lawyer, right? Um, so, and there was Kim Romano and Lisa Stiles and Debbie Soul and one other sister because she was from another clique, but she liked us better, so she would hang with us. But when her clique said, "Oh, why are you hanging out with those strange people? You know, come back to us." Anyway, because she was she was goth before goth. You know, this is 1950s. She was goth. She would wear dark eyeliner like in the third grade. Her mother had been a vaudeville starlet, so and I don't know why I can't remember her name. And so there was Vincent Salvatore, me, Mandy Law, J.P. Hoagland, mm, another Vincent, and Buzzy. And we were all really different, but we were all really smart and all really awake. We were all the awake ones, right? Buzzy was he was he was from another clique. He was another one, and he was a good athlete. But he was all this. He was the teacher's pet, and anyway, so the only time I ever used my kindergarten training was when and JP was you know, he always wore a suit because he always had a gun, and no one knew this. And so some guy was picking on him and like mercilessly, and JP was pretty good at getting out of the way, but he was getting pushed into a corner, and I knew JP, and I knew at some point he would like pull out his gun because he had it for self protection, Second Amendment. And I knew if he did that, I mean, he showed me the first time I met him. We're in the cafeteria. He took the gun. He said, "You want to see my gun?" I said, "Sure." He takes it out. He had a Walter PBK. He took it apart right there in the cafeteria. No teacher said anything. And he had this little box. He took the box out first. He opened it up, had a silk napkin in. He put it out on the table. Took his gun out and took it apart and showed how to clean it. Right. And he had in the box. He had the little brushy thing to clean the gun, and he had two extra clips and the silk napkin. And he took it out and placed it very methodically on the. He was a very methodical guy. He was a little autistic, but not in a very methodical kind of way. And he was totally awake. Anyway, so these bullies are picking on him, and I know that they're getting him off in a place where no teacher's watching this. And I had the sense that JP, he was kind of losing his cool, and if he drew his gun, he was taught never to pull out the gun unless you're going to use it. He wouldn't kill anybody; he'd shoot them in the leg, blow their kneecaps off. And I said, "Oops, I better," And I just kind of walked over there. They didn't even see me coming. I, kicked, this guy right in his calf behind his kneecap, and he went down, and he fell into the other guy, and I basically wanted to step in between them and JP, and I stepped on the kid's hand, and he screamed like JP had shot him, and I just kind of grabbed JP and walked him. We were like right near the corner of the building, and I just grabbed him and he went to the other side. I walked all the way around the building and came out onto the playground on the other side of the building, and everybody was over there. These two guys were on the ground, and they didn't even see me, right? And they weren't going to say that they were picking on JP because they were in sixth grade and we were in third grade, so all of those things. So and that they were on the ground and couldn't get up, and this little peanut of a kid who always wears a suit, did that to them. No, they weren't going to say anything about it, and they didn't even see me. And I grabbed JP and we were gone. So that's the only time I ever used my little training. But over the year, and JP's family were part of that. I mean, they were on to the teeth. So, my whole life is that I've been trained by different people to do different things, and then when it's time for them to collect on their investment, I go, "No, I'm not going to do that." And they go, like, "What? What? We trained you, we programmed you. You can't say no, but we have to have you to say yes. But if you say no," and that would throw them in a tizzy, And see, I never took it personally, and I never took it to the mat because I did that in the seminary my freshman year, and I saw how that doesn't work. And so I have a friend, her name is Catherine Austin Fitz. She has a really good website called Solaris.com. If you want to know what's going on in the world, you go watch her. And there's another guy I really like a lot called Dark Journalism. Really good. And a sister named Grace, Truly Graceful, or somewhat graceful, something graceful. That she is very good. But then there's people who do the Tatarian flat Earth thing and all the rest, and it's so there's a couple. The female is named Moon. I don't know what the guy calls himself. He used to call himself Soul or something. Anyway. And they're all about the mud flood, the Tatarian, blah, 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 right? And the world is flat. And, well, that's cool, but if you're going on about how all these other lies or these other belief structures are lies and yours is the best, that's, So I was never a firm believer in anything. And I never went to the bat for anything, right? Except truth and love. Those are the only things. And I don't believe in them. I have faith in them. I don't try. I do. And I don't try to be good. I do good. And now, I'm not perfect. And these belief structures, torment you by demanding that you're perfect. The people who are the born again Christians, the people who are uh, all of those different sects and cults, and that's all those religions are, sects and cults. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I don't care. But if you're doing it to mess with other people or control other people to damage other people, that's not right. Sorry. You know, it's like me watching that for JP. I didn't do that to prove to anybody how, I'm better than you are. No, my friend was going to do something that he would, regret for the rest of his life. So I interceded, and I did it in a way that didn't hurt anybody. Yeah, it caused them a little pain, but I didn't break anything or do anything to them that would, you know, change their life. Maybe they did, but maybe they became. Because I never saw those guys again. I mean, they didn't bother us ever, frigging ever again, right? And so, and no one did. And that was one of the good things about that grammar school. There were all these different cliques, and they were so almost xenophobic. That was great. We were left alone. We did what we did, and we supported each other. All those cliques, they were mean to each other, you know, and they were just programming that into them. So when they grew up, they would be that mean, manager of the Wendy's and the mean, guy working at the truck stop and the mean, and so that was, whereas we were really different, yet we were like family. We were more, and all our families were somewhat idiosyncratic at the best and downright vilely dangerous at the worst. And the girls had it the worst. Their families were really not very supportive at all. I mean, their fathers were like, truck drivers or, but self-loathing individuals that drank and then were mean, right? And my kindergarten teacher, it was kind of interesting because in first grade, I got thrown into the Catholic school. The nun killed me, and then I hung out with the Marinos for 3 years. As I was getting over being murdered by a nun. Because she crushed my windpipe. I couldn't talk. She broke my jaw. It was wired shut for 6 months. She broke this orbit. I couldn't see out of sight for like 8 years. And I wore a patch. I looked like a pirate for 8 years until I got into about the fifth grade. And you know, and every time I would take the patch off, and I could see at it, but it was like this eye was doing LSD. I mean, I was seeing most amazing. I was seeing things other dimensions. She squished my eyeball in such a way that the optic nerve worked in a different way. And things like that have always happened to me. I've been shot, I've been murdered, and it's always turned out for the best. Who knew? And so that's why I'm your griot. I'm telling you all these stories because I want to show you that none of this matters. The only thing that is real is love. And you need to do good. Not try to be good, but do good. And realize you're not perfect. You'll make mistakes. You're not always going to do the right thing. But if you are consciously aware, and see, right now, you guys, you are in a shamanic field. We started off, and I didn't continue. This is the guided meditation, you know, and I know that on a certain, because I can feel all of you out there in the chat, and I can tell that you're all plugged into this. I can feel your chi, and you're feeling pretty good right now. You're like, what is this, And all of you have been part of this. You've been watching this channel for some time, but you haven't gone on the chat. But you did, because I just said consciously intent. I am consciously intent. I am consciously intent. My intent, was, so I'm feeling now about 60% better, right? But because the other part, I split my intent in half, because I can do that. I can break it up into lots of pieces. I can have more than one intent going on at one time. And the other part of the intent is for you guys to feel this experience so you can go out in the world and change the world in your little neck of the woods. Because if this wasn't happening, there is more good in humanity than bad. And if that wasn't so, we wouldn't be here. We'd be toast, right? And we are bubbling towards ascension, and because we're all our relations, we're connected to everything in this sandbox here. And the folks who that 1% who are so sterilized and so opinionated in their ego, that they think killing everyone and everything is better, because it'll be more for them, more for them, more for them. You know, all those the top uh, poster boys of this darkness, you know, this shadow world. Is, the Musks and the Jeff Bezoses and the you know micro penis Bill and all of those guys, because they have no real essence of who they are. They are just the smudge of this materialism of mercantile mercenarianism, right? Of religion. Uh, and I love how you guys talk amongst yourself over there in the live chat. And that's part of being part of the cadre, part of being a family. That was my grammar school crew. We were a family. All our families were totally dysfunctional. Some at a better level, more harmonious than others. And like my parents, they married 75 years and they only had pleasantries for maybe two and a half of those 75. I mean, they were like, tormented each other. I mean, that's how, my first wife, she always tried to have an argument with me so we could have makeup sex. And I would always say, what? We don't have to do that to have, uninhibited sex. I don't have to be mad at you to have wild and crazy sex. We can do that for the fun of it. We don't have to do that. I don't want to. It does not make sense to me for you to be argue over something. I'm picking up my socks. I'm leaving the toilet seat down. I pay all the bills. I'm doing all the cooking. I'm giving you everything you want. There is nothing to argue about. And that would frustrate her because she was trained and tuned. That's what sex was. And then, you know, once because the only loving sex she had was lesbian sex. But then when she realized I was the best lesbian she ever had, that's when she eased up on that. But it used to really annoy her because I would, you know, you know, look at things, analyze things, make, plans for things, strategies for things. And I always would, she was my number one planning. What are we going to do? How are we going? That's why our studio, we were DNA. We wasn't her and me separately. We were together, DNA, the double twisted helix. And for 8 years, it worked great. But in the first, year and a half, it was a little training to get her out of that. And then at the end, when she wanted to do something different, she snapped back into that thing of confrontation and annoyance, and I wouldn't get annoyed. I just, sure, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? Let's do it your way. And I'm so, sure, let's do it your way. Let's do it your way. What? And she realized that I was smart enough to get her way to be my way, and it would just, and when we got divorced, and she's, I want to go to get divorced. I said, fine, not a problem, because she was already fooling around. Me, I'm a monogamous. Well, I'm involved with somebody. It's just me and them. Why have another, have things on the side? That's stupid. To me, it's stupid. It dilutes the energy, right? I'm going to be with someone. I'm going to be with them. But if they want to leave, it's not, someone else will pop into my life, and that's what it happens all the time. So I've had so many relationships because I'm there 100%. And usually, what happens is people get involved with. I mean, they're all great and smart and beautiful and all the above. But at a certain point, their illusion and their delusion gets the better part of them, and so they start wanting to, oh, we need to get married, or oh, we need to do. And I would analyze it. So really, you want to get married? How do you? And if it kind of makes sense, like when my first wife said, "Oh, we're in the middle of London, and we're doing a job, a photo job, that we could pay pretty good. We had to sign a contract, all the above." And then she refused to work, and the guy freaked out. I said, "What's wrong, honey? What's the problem?" So, "I want to get married." I said, "What? Right out of the blue? You hate kids, you hate the church, you hate the state. Why do you want to get married?" We were doing pretty good at this DNA partnership thing. We were as married as you could get, but without the involvement of the church or state. And she goes, "I don't know why. I just need to get married. I need to marry you. I need to marry you." And little did she know that she psychically knew her father was going to die. And before we left, her father basically said, "You're the one. You're going to marry my daughter." And I said, "Sir, I don't know if you know your daughter. I don't think that's going to work." And he goes, "No, you don't understand. I've seen a lot of her boyfriends. They're all jerks. You're a nice guy. I like you. And you take care of her. Everything you do to make her happy. I see that, and that's why I like you. You're an interesting guy. But this is my princess. This is the only thing I love on this planet is her. I don't even love my wife. I don't love my sons, but her I do love. And you're the only guy I could trust with her, with you. And so that you're going to marry her." And I was like, "I don't know." And then 6 months later, we had to get married in London. And, 8 months later, when we were in San Francisco, we died. So um, that's how I roll in relationships. And most people don't understand them, because, I'm so in love with who I'm with because I'm not going to be with anybody unless I love them and commit myself 100%. But, if you're going to do something, do it 100%. You're not perfect. You can't always do the right thing, but you can be 100%. You can do good, right? So, every relationship I've ever had has been that, but they're not all. It's not till forever. And everything was happy forever after. It's as good as you keep making it good. If you can't make it good anymore, and both sides want to, have a peaceful resolution of whatever it is, that's the way to go. That's why I'm a good negotiator. I'm not set on any specific outcome except a positive one, right? Mm, how many times were I married? Twice. But I've been in 5 committed relationships where we were married. As married as anybody else is married. And the thing that kind of broke those 5 relationships up was that those women, they're clocks, they not so much want to get married, they just want to have a baby with me. And I wasn't ready to have a baby, you know. And I knew that, and I told them that, and so they went on and had a baby with someone else. And some of them worked out great, and some not so great. Um, so I was married twice. I have one more marriage left in me, and one baby. I was told that when I was old and gray, and I'm getting there, that I would be with someone way younger than me, and specifically have a child, and specifically be with that child, until it was 15 or 16. So, it's going to happen relatively soon because I'm already in my 70s. I don't think I can, you know, do that when I'm 110. But, in the next 20 years, I still got another 20 years into me, unless I don't. Nothing's written in stone with me. I kind of go with the flow, as they say, but with a dynamic of positive, the goal of positive service, being there, being straight up, right? So let's see what you guys have been talking about. you know, because that was just my telling you all those stories was to get you to experience, to be able to be conscious to write stuff and still be in state. So that's the interesting thing, right? So let's see. Uh, hope you're well. Yep. And we are a team that work against online harassment, defending the weak. Yep, that's my everyday. I defend the weak. Um, let's see. Good vibes only. Yep. But as the name of this thing, we live in the shadow, right? And we pretty much are responsible for what's going on because we live off the crumbs. I don't know how many. I try and do amazing things every day, right? And when I was young, living in New York, New York's a pretty interesting big city. There's a lot of different people. If this thing doesn't work out, you can go find some other people to do it. So, and it was also the time. The manifestation of anything, a good deal of it is timing, right? And that's another one of my skill sets. Is I'm very, I'm consciously aware. So I'm consciously aware of timing, right? And so, you know, um, all the things why I've had so many different lives and careers, it's all timing. I just knew it's time. So I'm of a certain age where I've done again, and you're always, so I have I have instantaneous karma, and I'm in total dialogue with my dharma. So things change a lot with me, and at the same, they stay the same. So right now, um, and so working 10 years in the corporate world and making lots of money and spending it all right away. I mean, I had investments, but investments in the material are very ethereal. Well, I like that. Investments in the material is very ethereal. They don't last. They're not real. Like my dad, he worked his whole life to be a millionaire, and then in '08, he lost three-quarters of his net worth in like less than a month. It's like, and in '06, I had when I was working for the carpet guys, made money. So what do you do with money? I bought properties, because I was going around lots of different places, and these guys were showing me stuff. I had the inside thing, and I would buy this and that, and they were all rental properties. So I'd make pretty good money off the rental properties. Very good at picking people to be my renters, and they never stiffed me or gave me a hard time. And and most of them took care of their houses like it was theirs. I told them, I said, "This is your house. You do whatever you want with it. Keep it in good shape. Do better than worse. Don't tear it up. It's yours. Make it better." And when I went and sold everything, I sold it to all those people I rented it to, right? And I rented to them without having to get a credit. Every one of the people I rented to, even the business people, because I had some business properties, I never did a credit rating. I could read them like a book. If they were righteous, no problem. If they weren't, oh, I don't know about that. I'm still working things out, right? Anyway, so in between '06 and '07, I sold everything I had, right? And put it into other things that I didn't have to pay taxes on. And I bought some other things that weren't obviously as good a deal as all the other things I had. One was the school, and I just took 125 grand I had and gave it to my friend, right? And her son-in-law, who she said, well, he's going to do all the, the lawyering stuff, You just need to buy it. You talk to him. So I did. But, I already went to the the county and found out what the county said that the county said the building was worth. You know, they valued the property at $45,000. Now, I needed to buy a piece of property for 125,000, so I wouldn't have to pay 70,000 in taxes on other stuff, right? just taxes, right? If I spent 125,000 on a piece of property, I wouldn't have to spend 70 on taxes. So when she says you need to buy it, talk to my son-in-law, and he was a really good guy that he loved his mother-in-law more than his wife. He married his wife for his mother-in-law because he loved her and protected her, and always he was the one. After her husband, he just was there for her all the time. And so I knew this guy wasn't a schmuck. I mean, he could be a blowhard, he could be annoying, he could be a lot of things, but he wasn't a schmuck. And he loved my friend. So I knew she needed the money because she had no income, and I knew she needed the cash. I need to spend it on something. So in 2006, not a good business move, but I needed it was relatively because I don't want to pay that tax, and I wanted her to be okay till the day she died. So I knew if I did the closing, if I bought this place for 125 grand, which was like, almost 100 grand more than what the county said it was worth, there was no problem with me. And so, you know, he said, it's 125,000. I said, fine. Fine. No, all the money's going to Olga, right? Yep. It's going, yep. Said, fine. Yeah. And I said, here's my lawyer, have your lawyer talk to my lawyer. They'll do all the paperwork. I'll just be there for the closing. Okay. So I got a call from my lawyer. Oh, you need to talk to his lawyer about this, and this. I did. And we did. And then the guy says, well, you need to put that money into escrow. I said, no problem. It's I already started an escrow account at this bank. Here's the number. Call them up. I'll talk to the banker and give me your phone number. You guys, here's the account number. Okay, good. Well, that's amazing. Most people don't have to go get a loan and blah. I said, no, money's in escrow. So he did. They did. So at closing, this guy, because he thought he was hot shit because he had an Audi and that he, wore, fancy clothes all the time, and his house was like his wife was an interior director, blah blah blah. I mean, that's why he could be annoying. He was always right, but he was always fucking up, But I didn't care. It was his life, whatever. But he was, like I said, he wasn't a schmuck. As long as he's not a schmuck, whatever else it is, it's not a problem. So anyway, we're at the closing, and the whole time, you got the money, you got the money. I said, just talk to your lawyer. And the lawyer said, oh, yeah, the money's the escrow, no problem. He still didn't believe it, right? We're at the closing, it all goes through, and the guy goes, so is the money there? Is the money there? And the guy said, no, is the money there? The money is already, he set it up so that escrow account would not go through you, would go straight into Inga's account and Olga. And so, anyway, so and for years he still couldn't believe that I bought the place. How do you make your money? Because he always saw me as like, as a lot of people do. Like, look at a guy walk around in his pajamas is like, But if you talk to me, right? Whoa. And then people of power, people who within this illusion, they I see, oh, this guy's wearing pajamas, but he's at this fancy dinner party, and no one seems to, we're all wearing tuxedos, and he's wearing his, Disney pajamas. I need to talk to this guy. So, I mean, that's how I found most of my corporate accounts was at parties like that, and I'd be reading people's palms, and I give them a number 1 to 25. I want you to ask a question. Just keep it to yourself, and then pick a number 1 to 25, and that would be a rune, and I would tell them what that rune was, and what it meant, and how it related to them, and I would like only have been talking to them for 5 minutes, and they'd be like, and that's when lawyers would go, "Wow, this guy can read people like I've never seen anybody read people like this," and so I said, "I need him." Because he could go in and negotiate these things because he could read these people. And that was what I did. And I'd go in there looking like a homeless guy. And I'd have these two big dogs on either side of me who were very nice, they wouldn't say a word. They would stay right behind me. I had no leash. I'd stop, they'd stop. If we stopped for more than 20 seconds, they'd sit down, right? If we were there for more than 2 minutes, they'd lie down. If we were there more than 20 minutes, they'd go to sleep. But they'd have one eye open, right? Let's see what else are you guys saying here. Let's go back up the rung. Nerwee. Shout out to Apex. Papa, love you guys. Moon in the morning. Moon at night. Yeah. Let's see. Shout out to Apex. Apex. There's shout out to Apex. Frap Nui. Nervy. Okay. Trucker. Love Apex. What is Apex, Trucker? Is that one of us or another site? Um, uh, uh, See, as I read all this, I always think that you guys are having conversations on the sides that I can't hear. Guess I'm just telling stories here. But I can read all of your energy, so I know it's all good. So it's all as it should be, as they say. How often do you stream? Well, right now I'm in a place that has really good Wi-Fi, so I'm kind of doing it every day. I try to do one in the morning and one in the evening. And as long as I stay around this neighborhood, I will try to do that. But when I'm out in the deep woods, there is no internet. I do it maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times a week if I do that. Right now, because living out in the woods, camping in the middle of winter, last winter I did that, and it was like, a little difficult. And I'm 30 miles from anyway. Nobody checks up on me. If I slip and fall and freeze to death, they'll find me in the spring being eaten by my pet squirrels, so. So, Trucker, I don't know if you're talking about me or Michelle, but you can go on my channel, Dreamy Dream. Any of you guys can go on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. And I know you found it because you're right here on the stream, and I got at least 1,500 shows. I've been doing this about 3 years. Yeah. So a bunch of you here. Are you still on board? Still watching? And gang, you can all go and visit me at my email, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And if any of you would like to throw down something into my PayPal, that would be really. Right now, I have about $3 to my name, and I'm pretty safe with knowing where I'm going to be for this week. But a week from now or a week from then, I have no idea where I'm going to be. And see, that's kind of, again, we living in the shadow world. Things are happening right in front. We're, you know, this guy who watches, but has a very interesting channel about Tartarianism and the flat Earth and the mud flood, and all those things are true because we live in a multi-dimensional world. See, that's what kind of gets most people stuck is that they don't realize that we live in a multi-dimensional world, and there's more than one of you. That's why I have so many lives. I'm just pretty good at integrating all those dimensions, you know. So, and a lot of people would listen to my stories or hang out with me for a while, and would would get annoyed with because because I bump up against their belief structure, and this guy's totally doesn't know what he's talking about. And because of the advent of Google, I would say, well, they'd be like, I want to argue with you about this. I don't want to argue. You believe what you believe, that's fine. If you want to prove anything, go Google it. That's the benchmark of truth these days. And virtually all of them would Google it and find out exactly what I was saying was true. And exactly, I don't, I've never made a big deal out of being famous or infamous or whatever I did. I'm a guy who wants to do good, not try to be good, do good, right? And in all my actions, all my involvements, I do good. And that's the little niche in the organizational structures that I go to, is to do good. Even the most rancid, evil, or considered evil thing needs somebody who's in there doing good, right? So, that's me. That's what I do. So that's why I've been involved in so many different things. And when you were to go look at all the things I've been involved with, there I am. I mean, I'm always in that picture of the people who started this, the founding fathers. There I am, you know, the people who were instrumental in making this happen. There I am, right? And I stopped calling things founding fathers. I kept calling them the grandmother's council. Because you can be a grandma and be male because your gender doesn't matter, you know. And people who get stuck in their gender have no idea who they are, you know. Like my first wife said, many other women have also complimented me on being the best lesbian they've ever hung out with, you know. So, and pretty much I can relate to any gender, any race, anything, right? That's what makes me a great negotiator because I don't see myself as a separate entity from anybody. We're all our relations, right? And so when I'm being the negotiator, I'm relating to everyone in the party as them. And I can make it. That's why you watch this channel. That's why you're on the chat. That's why you're chatting about other things while I'm chatting about this. Because it's all connected. Right? We're all together. We're understanding. We're feeling. You come here and you chat and you feel this way on this chat in a way that you don't feel. You know, you're not trying to oppress or show off. Or you're just being you on this chat, and I feel that. And I'm telling the story to to not emulate, but to what's it? Make it better, right? To complement. That's the word, compliment. And I really try to use the right word. I'm big into etymology, so even though if you can't, the way I talk is remains of me being murdered by that nun in first grade. You know, the crushing of my uh, windpipe and the harm that did to my larynx and the breaking of my jaw. That's, I mean, even though it looks okay, it's still a little further back, and and my eye and my ear. I see things in a way different way. I talk in a different way. I couldn't talk for 3 years. Period. Couldn't talk. So I became an excellent listener. You know, and you're given two ears and one mouth. So I had two ears, but this one was damaged. But instead of going, oh, it's damaged, I need this, I need that, hearing aid, oh, ooh, I can't, oh, well, you gotta, blah, blah, blah. No, I realized that this damage make my hearing better because I hear other things with this ear. I hear things far away with this ear. I hear things in your body moving. And that's why I can tell your tells. Okay? And all of these things, have been in me since first grade and before I was born. Because all the things that happened to you for a reason. So, you know, that's what I do. So when I'm out here talking to you and you're on the chat, that's why you kind of let go. You relax. You're no longer trying to impress. You're being part of the cadre. This is one of the few places where you are part of the crew. You're not trying to break into the crew or impress the crew or any of that. You are the crew, you know? Discord. No, I'm not on any other platform other than this and on because I don't want to say I'm a Luddite because I'm a technologist, I actually have a degree in that, a futurologist, I used to get paid to look at trends. And they said, what are you? I said, oh, I'm a futurologist. That doesn't exist. Well, I'm one, so yes, it exists, So, thank you, Sandra. I basically, you know, am who, me and Popeye are the only two people who I am who I am, God didn't even say that. The burning bush didn't say, I am, in the King James, the burning bush said, I am, when Moses said, who are you? He said, I am who I am. No, he did not say that. What the burning bush said was, I am a work in progress. And that's what we all are. We're all a work in progress. This ain't a done deal. There is no finish line in your life. You're a work in progress, right? So do good. Be better. Don't be your worst self. Don't, I love Devo, de-evolution. Don't de-evolve, you know? So, well, this is hour and 52 minutes. 7 people here. It's only 9:17. And my body feels about 60% better than it did when I started. So, I got another, I don't know, 40 minutes left of this chat. And I'll do another one tonight. And I want to work. I would suggest people to go watch Doc Journalist, right? On YouTube. And he has Kristen Austin Fitz. He had a really good, uh, one with her today, this morning. And she has her Solaris.com. And that is something you should go check out. And let's see. Anyway, so we're this is you have to realize, and there are, virtually every 200 years we go through a transitional period, right? And the Civil War was not about not about slavery, not even about state rights. It wasn't even about the means of production. It was about rebranding of what we were as a state. And what we're rebranding ourselves into now, why Joe Biden was put in place wasn't to, wasn't that, Donald Trump got 20 million more votes than he did when he won, he's right about, oh, this thing. But you have to realize that every election, from president down to the dog catcher, is fixed. You have to realize that, guy, because it's not that you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose the best person. You're given. It's either Coke or Pepsi. And they're both the same. So what do you choose? And virtually everything that is edible, anything that can be put into human beings today, your air, your water, the dirt you walk on, the food you eat, is all poison. You know, and this is the first time in about 60 years that the age of mortality is going down. Meaning, for the last at least since World War I, it's been going up, 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 up in America, and now it's starting to go down, especially with white men really going down. No other country, you go to like really poor countries in Africa or anywhere else in the world, Asia, really poor countries, countries that have no industry, like Afghanistan. If they stop shooting each other, they live forever, you know, because their environment isn't it. Well, Iraq, Iran, um, not Iran, yeah, Iran too, but that whole Fertile Crescent there, from Afghanistan to Saudi Arabia to Iran over here, all of that, Syria, Iraq, the wars have poisoned. I mean, any place that we fought wars, any place that we had A-10s flying around, that big Gatling gun in the front shoots out bullets. Those bullets are depleted uranium, and depleted uranium. Each one of those bullets is like a mini nuclear weapon because it is so dense that when it hits a piece of armor, it goes through it. It's not like a 50 cal that kind of gets blunted out. It still keeps its point, but the friction causes a chain reaction within the depleted uranium shell and leaves, you know, really nasty radioactive byproducts all over the place. So, yeah, last 20 years, we've been shooting a shitload of those shells in Afghanistan and Iraq and a lot of in Syria too, and in Libya. So we have totally nuked all those places. And any place else we've been fighting using these weapons. And and they are like chemical warfare, you know. And we never signed that treaty, and we're the only some of the only, I think, us, England, and a few other people, the only people who didn't sign the Mine Treaty, And yet, most of the people who die uh, in Southeast Asia, even today, especially kids, um, um, the landmines that are left over from the war we had there in the 70s are still killing people, right? And what's really sick, Dow, the people who manufacture, it's not Dow, they just make certain component parts, but whoever makes the mines actually made mines that look like toys. And we used them in Afghanistan and other places. And, just would dump them, tons of them out of the back of an airplane, out on the ground. And a little kid would pick them up and blow his hand off, right? Usually the gun, the hand, he would be doing a gun. We've turned children into weapons, So that is this dark side, this shadow world that we live in. And we are complicit with this, right? By just living in it, we're complicit. Now, how I navigate through that complicitness is I do good. I don't try to do good. I do good every day in every way. And, like, I get bottled water, but instead of me throwing away those things, I buy a packet of bottled water and then I keep filling it up out of the tap until the bottle kind of doesn't, work because the plastic is so thin that if you keep filling it up and drinking out of it, you're squeezing it and doing, putting it through that. By the 15th time you've done it, that bottle has had its due. So I try to do that. I try to reuse everything to keep my footprint off this planet. But still, I consume a lot of crap that I don't need. It's I'm complicit, right? We all are complicit, and that's one of the problems of a belief structure. You don the belief structure like a piece of clothing that you think it's going to protect you spiritually, emotionally, physically. No, being a Christian, being a Jew, being a Islam, being a Vedic, being a any religion, not going to protect you. Sorry. Theology is a nice thing to study. I'm a theologian, but it's not. None of those things are my belief structure. There are a lot of good things in them. I try to implement the good, and that's why I study all these religions so I can interact with the people who are followers, because that's what they are. They are They're not even practitioners. They're followers. They're not practicing. Well, Christians aren't practicing what Jesus said. You know, we don't even know what Jesus said because the Bible is the biggest, longest telephone game ever. All during the 900 years of the Dark Ages, Catholic Church wouldn't let anyone learn how to read. That was their way of sticking everyone in one place, right? And we're quickly getting to that place again, right? Our schools are like a joke. And so, as people are addicted to consumption, that's what keeps, mercantile. We are a mercantile. You know, the great maker did not start this game, this sandbox, to have us be merchants. We were put here to. This is a sandbox. This is so our spirit can reacclimate itself to all our relations, and we can ascend. That's what we're put here to do, is to ascend our spiritual name, our spirit, not our soul. Our soul is a server. It's an apparatus. It's not it, right? Can't save your soul. Be what you be, cause if you be what you ain't what you is. I like that sentence. Very good. Hello, Bob. Yep. Have a great Saturday, Bob. I will. My body is like up to 80%. You know, but this is how I have to start every morning, meditating and consciously intent. I am, meaning that my body's gonna get up, put my pants on. What am I gonna time in my shoes and move forward, right? So, let's see. It looks like everybody. Yeah, I think it's time. It's 2 hours and 2 minutes and 22 seconds. That is, I love those synchronistic moments. Okay, I'm going to be back, oh, between 7 and 8. Okay? Or any time afterwards. Okay? Okay, because the house is full of people now, and I have to do, be what I be. Okay, I love you all. Catch you later. Yep.